My husband's family tried to sabotage our wedding, but my grandmother's surprise inheritance saved the day. My husband, Alex, and I had been together for 5 glorious years when he proposed. We were ecstatically happy, planning our future, dreaming of a quaint little ceremony followed by a fun reception. We both came from relatively modest backgrounds, and while neither of us was wealthy, we were financially stable and good at saving. We had a decent chunk put away for a down payment on a house and a separate, smaller fund for a wedding. We envisioned something intimate, maybe 50 guests, a delicious catered meal, and a great DJ. Simple, elegant, and most importantly, stress-free. The moment we announced our engagement to Alex's family, however, the stress began. Alex has an older sister, Bethany, who is 3 years his senior, and a younger brother, Mark, who is 2 years younger. Their parents, David and Susan, had always favored Bethany. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, who excelled in everything she tried. Mark and Alex, while loved, always felt like secondary characters in the Bethany show. This favoritism had always been a source of quiet resentment for Alex, something he rarely spoke about but that simmered beneath the surface. I had witnessed it firsthand during holidays and family gatherings. Bethany would get the most expensive gifts, her achievements would be lauded for hours, and her opinions held above all others. David and Susan were constantly comparing Alex and Mark to Bethany, subtly demeaning their accomplishments while elevating hers. Our engagement news, instead of being met with joy, was met with a barrage of questions about our financial preparedness, followed by Susan immediately suggesting a more appropriate venue, a lavish country club that was clearly out of our budget. When we politely explained our vision for a smaller wedding, Susan sighed dramatically and said, "But darling, this is your only wedding. It has to be perfect." Bethany always dreamed of a grand wedding. It became apparent very quickly that this wasn't about our wedding. It was about Bethany's hypothetical future wedding, and how ours couldn't possibly overshadow hers. Over the next few months, their subtle attempts to control our wedding escalated. Every decision we made was met with disapproval. When we picked a caterer, Susan insisted on a different, far more expensive one that specialized in high-end cuisine. When we chose our floral arrangements, Bethany commented, "Those are a bit simple, aren't they? For your wedding, I mean." It was always couched in concern, but the underlying message was clear: you are not good enough, and your choices are subpar. The guest list became a major point of contention. We had aimed for 50 guests, mostly close family and friends. Susan presented us with a list of over 150 names, half of whom we didn't even know. "These are important business associates, darling," she said, as if we were hosting a corporate event. And of course, all of Bethany's friends must be invited. When we pushed back, Alex's father, David, chimed in. "It's a matter of family honor, Alex. You wouldn't want to embarrass us, would you?" The pressure was immense. Alex, ever the people pleaser, started to waver, but I held firm. This was our day. One particularly frustrating evening, after another argument about the cake, Susan thought our choice of a simple, elegant tiered cake was pedestrian and insisted on a custom-designed, multi-layered confection that cost more than our entire catering budget. I finally snapped. "Susan," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "we appreciate your input, but Alex and I have made our decisions. This is our wedding, and we are planning it according to our wishes and our budget." Susan's face hardened. "Well, if you're going to be so stubborn, don't expect any help from us," she declared, and she and David stormed out. Alex looked crushed. He hated conflict, especially with his family. I felt terrible for him, but I knew we couldn't let them dictate everything. Things went quiet for a few weeks, which was almost more unnerving than the constant badgering. We continued with our plans, feeling a sense of relief. We booked our venue, sent out our invitations with our guest list, and finalized our catering. We thought maybe, just maybe, they had finally understood. We were wronged a month before the wedding. The true sabotage began. Our caterer called, sounding confused. "Mrs., my last name," she said. "I just received a call from your mother-in-law." She informed me you'd changed the menu entirely and wanted to add several expensive appetizers and a caviar bar. She also said you'd increased the guest count to 150. I just wanted to confirm these changes, as the cost would be significantly higher. My heart sank. No, I said, my voice tight. Those are not our changes. Our menu and guest count remain exactly as they were. The caterer apologized profusely, explaining that Susan had been very convincing, even impersonating my voice on the phone. We managed to rectify the situation, but the incident left me shaken. Who does that? Then, the florist called. Susan had apparently informed them that we'd decided on an entirely different color scheme and requested exotic, expensive flowers that were out of season. Again, we managed to correct it, but the pattern was clear. They weren't just offering input anymore. They were actively trying to undermine our plans and drive up our costs. Knowing full well we had a strict budget, Alex was furious. He confronted his parents, who feigned innocence. "We were just trying to help, dear," Susan said, batting her eyelashes. "We thought you'd prefer those options." David added, "You know we only want the best for you, son." It was gaslighting at its finest, making Alex question his own sanity. But I had the phone records, the emails from the vendors detailing Susan's calls. There was no denying it. The final straw came a week before the wedding. Our original wedding cake was a simple, 3-tiered vanilla and raspberry delight, elegantly decorated. It was exactly what we wanted. We went for our final tasting and the baker, looking uncomfortable, said, "So, your mother-in-law was very insistent on the new design. She said you wanted a 7-tiered cake, entirely covered in edible gold leaf, with a rotating top layer featuring a miniature ice sculpture of a swan." Alex stared at me, his face pale. "No," he said slowly, "that's absolutely not what we wanted." The baker showed us the new invoice. The cost was astronomical, more than triple the original price. Susan had not only ordered it but had put down a substantial deposit, effectively forcing our hand. "She said you were paying the balance on the day of pickup," the baker explained, "and that you had approved all the changes." We were devastated. We couldn't afford it. This was an outright attempt to financially cripple us and force us into a corner. We had less than a week until the wedding, and suddenly we had no cake. And the constant pressure and sabotage were taking a serious toll on our emotional well-being. Alex was a wreck, constantly apologizing to me for his family's behavior. I reassured him it wasn't his fault, but the stress was immense. We almost considered eloping. That evening, as we sat in silence, wondering how we were going to fix this latest disaster, my phone rang. It was my grandmother, Nana Rose. She sounded unusually serious. "Darling," she began, "I have something important to tell you. I've decided to make an early distribution from your inheritance. I know your wedding is next week, and I want you to have this now." I was stunned. I knew I had a small inheritance coming to me from my grandparents, but I had always assumed it would be later in life, perhaps when I was ready to retire. I certainly hadn't expected it now. "Nana, what are you talking about?" I asked, completely bewildered. "Well," she continued, her voice softening, "your grandfather and I always believed in helping our loved ones when they needed it most. We've seen how much stress you've been under with this wedding planning, and frankly, we've heard some things from your mother about Alex's family. We want you to have the wedding you deserve, without all the unnecessary drama." My mother, it turned out, had been quietly observing the chaos and reporting back to my grandmother. She knew about Susan's antics and had been worried sick about us. My Nana, a formidable woman with a heart of gold, had decided to intervene. "So," Nana said, "I've transferred a significant amount into your account, enough to cover any unexpected changes and still have plenty left over for your future." I checked my banking app. The amount that had just been deposited took my breath away. It wasn't just significant, it was life-changing. It was enough to cover all the extravagant upgrades Susan had tried to force on us, and still leave us with a substantial down payment for a beautiful house, With money left over for renovations, I burst into tears, tears of relief and gratitude. "Nana," I choked out. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me, dear," she said warmly. "Just promise me you'll have a wonderful, stress-free wedding. And don't let anyone dictate your happiness." The next morning, I called the baker. "We'll take the 7-tiered gold leaf swan cake," I said, a mischievous glint in my eye. "And we'll pay for it in full right now." The baker sounded surprised but delighted. Then, I called the caterer. "Yes, we'd like to add those expensive appetizers and the caviar bar. And let's increase the guest count to 150. I booked the ridiculously expensive floral arrangement Susan had suggested and confirmed the extravagant venue upgrades. Alex was beside himself. "What are you doing?" he asked, completely bewildered. "We can't afford all this." I explained about Nana Rose's generous gift. Alex was overwhelmed, both by the unexpected inheritance and by my Nana's incredible kindness. He knew what this meant. It meant we could finally beat his parents at their own game. The wedding day arrived, and it was glorious. The country club was stunning, the flowers were breathtaking, the caviar bar was a hit, and the 7-tiered, gold leaf swan cake was a marvel. Every detail that Susan had tried to force on us, thinking she was sabotaging us, had inadvertently made our wedding incredibly luxurious. When Susan and David arrived, their jaws practically hit the floor. They looked around, wide-eyed, at the opulent decorations, the lavish food, the sheer scale of the event. They clearly expected a budget wedding, an embarrassment they could later lord over us. Instead, they found themselves at a spectacle that far surpassed anything they could have imagined. They looked utterly bewildered, and I savored every moment. During the reception, Susan approached me, her voice laced with a strange mix of confusion and awe. "Darling," she said, "this is incredible. How did you manage all this?" I smiled sweetly. "Oh, you know, just a little help from my family," I replied, deliberately vague. "And we decided, since you were so insistent on everything being perfect, that we would just embrace your wonderful suggestions." Alex's family spent the entire evening in a state of confused disbelief. They couldn't understand how we had pulled it off. They knew our financial situation, or at least, they thought they did. Their attempts to make us look cheap and unsophisticated had completely backfired, and they had inadvertently helped us create the wedding of our dreams, albeit a much grander version than we initially planned. The best part was watching Bethany's reaction. She was visibly seething. This wasn't just our wedding, it was the wedding, the one that would undoubtedly be talked about for years, setting an impossibly high standard for her own future nuptials. Her perfect image was completely overshadowed. After the wedding, Alex confronted his parents one last time. He laid out all the evidence of their sabotage, the phone calls, the forged instructions to vendors, the deliberate attempts to inflate our costs. He told them how hurtful their actions had been, how they had almost ruined the most important day of our lives. David and Susan, still reeling from the unexpected grandeur of the wedding, finally admitted their deceit, albeit reluctantly. They tried to justify it by saying they only wanted the best for us, but Alex wasn't having it. He told them that their best had almost destroyed their relationship with him and me. He made it clear that if they ever tried such tactics again, he would cut contact. The relationship with Alex's family has been strained ever since. They still haven't fully grasped the extent of Nana Rose's generosity, nor do they understand how we managed to pay for everything. They constantly make subtle digs, trying to figure out where the money came from, but we just smile and deflect. We never reveal the source of the funds, allowing them to stew in their confusion and bitterness. The inheritance from Nana Rose not only saved our wedding, but also gave us the financial freedom to truly start our lives together on our own terms. We bought a beautiful house, just like we always dreamed, and we live comfortably, free from the financial worries that Alex's family had tried to impose on us. We have Nana Rose to thank for that, and for teaching us that sometimes the best way to deal with family drama is to let love, and a little unexpected financial windfall, pave your own way.